Welcome back to the Dershow. We have a special Dershow today. I've gotten so many letters asking me to do a show that explains everything on my wall and all my collections and the historical stuff that I've talked about in the past. And so I'm going to do that today. Um, this is my winter home. This is our residence. It's just a small apartment in Miami Beach, Florida. I have other stuff in my New York apartment and other stuff in my Martha's Vineyard. So this only has a limited part of my pretty extensive historical collection. Now, I've already started last couple of shows ago by showing you this incredible letter from Thomas Jefferson to his grandson. I'm not taking it out of the plastic, but it actually has several signatures of Thomas Jefferson. It starts out by saying, "Dear Jefferson," that's his grandson. Here's his grandson, by the way. This is a picture of his grandson from a book written about his grandson. This is actually just a PhD thesis, but it has a good picture. So it says, "Dear Jefferson," and then it says, inside the letter, it says, "Address it to Thomas Jefferson." So that's really a second Jefferson. Then he signs it Thomas Jefferson. And then on the back, where he kept it in his files, because this is an auto pen version of what he wrote, the original, went to his grandson. It says, "Randolph Thomas J." and the date February 17th, 09, which is just a couple of months before he left the presidency. So that's the major Jefferson item that I have here, but I have another one as well. This is an authentic signature of Thomas Jefferson, and a little note in the back that says, "From an engraving by," and then it says who, and then it was found in the home of Mrs. Benjamin Franklin Randolph, who is Thomas Jefferson's granddaughter, and if I'm not mistaken, maybe the mother of Randolph Jefferson, or Jefferson Randolph. I got this in a flea market here in Miami Beach, and the price marked on the back, it says Jeff, $275. Now, obviously, a Thomas Jefferson autograph is worth a lot more than that, and this is in its original frame. And I probably bargained them down to probably $200. So, that's my hobby, collecting things at flea markets. And most of the stuff I get is from flea market. Obviously, the Jefferson letter was not. I had to bid against a lot of people to get it at an auction. Another thing from Thomas Jefferson is a very rarely seen pamphlet that he wrote prior to his presidency, and this is number 96 of 100 that were printed, and it's called "A Summary View of the Rights of British America," and it was an original pamphlet written by Thomas Jefferson, and this is an old copy of it. So that's my Jefferson stuff. Obviously, back in New York, I have a letter written by George Washington to the troops during the Revolutionary War, urging them to get inoculated against smallpox. The greatness of that letter is, although it was signed by George Washington, a beautiful signature, it was handwritten, 3 pages, by his secretary, a kid named forget the name sometimes. Oh, yeah, Alexander Hamilton, who was his aide-de-camp, and he wrote the whole letter. So to have a letter written by Hamilton, signed by Washington about inoculation, I have to say that's just about my favorite. So there are really good things in this little office that I have here. I want to show you a couple other things. My wife, who's the photographer for this show, is going to get up now and show. Well, I guess I can take it down. This is a picture of me giving advice to President Obama in the Oval Office, and it says, "To Alan, thanks for your friendship and counsel, Barack Obama." Obviously, an original signature. and not so proud of it because I don't think that my friendship with Obama certainly hasn't continued. So I'm keeping the picture. I'm much happier with this picture. This is a picture of me throwing out the first ball at Fenway Park, and it's signed by the man to whom I threw out the first ball, the great third baseman for the Red Sox, Kevin Youkilis, to Alan. Way to throw a strike, just the way you always do. So I'm very, very happy about that. Speaking of that, though, I want to tell you a sad story. This is a picture of me and my wife and John Henry, the owner of the Boston Red Sox, and the owner of the Boston Globe, with his wife and children, and we're all dressed. We're in Venice. He had flown us on his plane and then taken us on his yacht. And we were good friends, and I remember one night he asked me to entertain, and I sang some songs. I sang Some Enchanted Evening, and we were good friends until the day I defended Donald Trump. From the day I defended Donald Trump, he has never spoken to me. I have been banned from the Red Sox owner's box. Now, I wonder how many Red Sox fans and players would actually agree with him canceling me simply as the result of me exercising his constitutional right to be defended from an unconstitutional impeachment. But that's what happened to me. And John Henry was one of the villains, along with his wife. And if you read the Boston Globe, you will probably understand why it's so biased. Because when you have somebody who owns it, who won't even speak to a friend with whom he has traveled all over the world because he defended him in a legal case, it tells you more about John Henry and about his wife Linda Henry than it does about me or even about Donald Trump. So that's a sad part of what I have in my office. Speaking of baseball, this is one of the greatest pictures I've ever seen in baseball. This is Jackie Robinson's first at bat. It's in Ebbets Field. It's in 1947. I own the ring that was the championship, National League championship ring in 1947. I was 9 years old, but still a great baseball fan. But if you close in to see who's sitting in the front row watching Jackie Robinson at bat, this is a great photograph. In the front row, 1, 2, 3, 4, are the 4 leaders of the mafia. Colombo and Lansky and Bugsy Siegel. I don't remember. Maybe their names are on the back. Lucky Luciano, Albert Anastasia, Meyer Lansky, and one other. So this is a great picture. Everybody loves the picture because it's Jackie Robinson coming up to bat. I love the picture because in the front row are the guys who are probably betting on it, the heads of the mafia. So that's down here too. Another thing I got at a flea market, this is a great calling card of William Jennings Bryan. Remember him? He was the alleged villain of the Scopes Monkey trial, although if you actually read the transcript, he gets the better of the argument over the other side. So that's some of these pictures. I always put up as well letters that I get. Here's a kind of typical letter. Alan, you're a money-grubbing piece of shit Zionist who should have been taken out during the Third Reich. On behalf of the silent majority, leave America with a swastika. Well, I'm not going to leave America. I love America. This is a yarmulke that was presented to me at the White House during a Hanukkah party with a symbol of the President of the United States and the White House, Washington, D.C., and the last time I was in the Oval Office with President Trump, he gave me some candies. And so these are kisses signed by Donald Trump. I also have in New York boxes of candy like this from Clinton and from Obama, and I think maybe from Bush, but I'm not absolutely positive. So let's turn to the back wall, which people have focused on so much. In asking me questions. I collect wanted posters. This is a wanted poster of John Dillinger, an actual wanted poster, $10,000 reward for, as you know, he was shot and killed. But this is an authentic, original poster. Up here is a headline from a South African newspaper, Dershowitz not welcome here. Harvard professor campaign against Desmond Tutu. I'm so proud that I exposed Desmond Tutu for the bigot, anti-Semite he actually was. He's, praised around the world, but not praised in this house. And when I went to South Africa to speak, I was scheduled to speak about many things, including Tutu. And so my speech was canceled as the result of this article. And the argument they made in canceling it was, well, there aren't enough people who are interested. So it got canceled at the University of, I forget which university it was in South Africa. So they moved it out of the university where they said there would be no people. They moved it down the block, 1 block away, and 1,400 people showed up, standing room only. They had to keep the crowds out. So much for that excuse. This is an interesting piece. This is an authentic piece of the gate at the barbed wire fence at Auschwitz. And my son and I went to Auschwitz in 1987, and we stole a little piece of the barbed wire, and we bought a yellow star in an antique shop in Poland that had Yud, Jew, on it, and we framed it to remember and to prevent. So it's hanging in my office. Interestingly enough, it's hanging not too far from a copy of the Balfour Declaration, which was the first official declaration of Great Britain recognizing that there should be a Jewish homeland in Israel. This picture is me with a beard and my then girlfriend, or maybe early wife, I don't remember exactly when it was, 1988. So she was my wife already, Carolyn, in the middle. And that's my mother, who was at the time, let's see, 1988. She was born 1913. So she was 75. She was younger than I am today. She lived to 95. This is an interesting picture. This is a photograph of Elvis Presley with his underwear, taking his induction test for the Army. That didn't go too smoothly. This is a very interesting, found this in a flea market. This is an Italian a broadside, a statement about the rights of Jews in Italy, in parts of Italy, and it's written in Italian and Hebrew, and it imposes a special tax on Jews if they live in that town and seek its protection. Other things around the office are, I love this. This is a photograph. My wife found it in Art Basel, which is a very upscale art show here in Miami Beach. And this is a photograph taken when I was about 17 years old. This is 1955, you can see from the cars. And it's taken in my neighborhood of Brooklyn. You can see from the street signs where it was. I'm not in it. And it's a guy playing stickball. I used to play stickball. And it's by a photographer who photographed Italian street gangs. And we had some of them. They weren't dangerous, particularly. Occasionally you get into a little tumble with them. But these are kids playing stickball. It could have been me, but it wasn't. In stickball, it was measured by how many sewers you could hit. You see the sewers? These are the sewers. Usually, in my neighborhood, they were much further apart. And so if you could hit like 2 sewers, you were a pretty good stickball or punchball player. And if you could hit 3 sewers, you were off the charts. Now, Sandy Koufax lived in my neighborhood, but as far as I know, he never measured his capacity to hit by sewers. He wasn't much of a hitter, but what a pitcher. What a great pitcher. So we're going to walk now to the hallway of our apartment, where I have some interesting photographs and memorabilia. This is a handwritten and hand-addressed letter by Winston Churchill, and it talks about his visit to Palestine prior to the establishment of Israel. So that's why I bought that letter. Most of the rest of this is stuff I got in flea markets. It's hard to believe, but this is an original Picasso lithograph. I bought it in a flea market for a couple of $100. If you turn it around now, this is a poster, but it's also a poster with a lithograph of another great Picasso, and I again paid nothing for that at a flea market. This is a photograph of the four Beatles at the Delano Hotel, which is 3-4 blocks from here, swimming in the pool in the first year I think they came to America. And so it's a wonderful photograph, and it's perfect for our apartment because it was taken just 4 blocks away from here. This is a pretty irreverent photograph taken by a friend of mine of Mick Jagger, who is telling the world what he thinks. Mick Jagger, as you probably know, was a close friend of both Jeffrey Epstein and people around him, and he certainly was on any list of Epstein friends and acquaintances. These are lists that I want to come out because I know you'd be ashamed of. These are photographs. This is a lithograph of Albert Einstein. This is a photograph by Eisenstadt, a great photographer. And these are photographs by a friend of ours of famous Hollywood stars. And so, this is what I surround myself with. A few years ago, my wife and I went to Cuba, and this was a photograph of a woman, an old woman, sitting and smoking a Cuban cigar. And I thought that was the best souvenir of the trip. This is a photograph of Salvador Dali, by Ouija, and it's so typical Dali. And finally, I want to show you one of my best flea market purchases ever. If this were The Real Oil by Chagall, it's called I and the Village. This original is in the Modern Museum in New York, MoMA, and it's worth in excess of $50 million. Needless to say, this is not the original, but this is an oil painting, probably by a student who was trying to replicate Chagall, and here it is.
Okay.
Tell me when.
No.
So this is one of my favorite replicas, and I love it. I look at it because it's such a good piece of art, even by the student. I can't even read the signature of who the student is, but I can tell you he's a pretty good artist. And the rest is just art that I have around the house, much of it flea market, some of which I bought in galleries. Let me go back now and read some letters, and we can end this unusual show. All right, first letter. Alan, would you please provide your understanding of exactly what constitutes anti-Semitism and what doesn't? The term seems to be thrown around easily these days. Thank you. For me, it's very simple. Applying a double standard to Jews, to the Jewish people, or to the Jewish state. If you judge us by a single standard, that's not anti-Semitic. You can be as critical as you can. But if you apply a different standard to Israel than you apply to other countries, a different standard to the Jewish people, a different standard to an individual Jew and admitting him or her to a university, that's anti-Semitism. It's as simple as that. Okay, this is interesting. Alan, you're more popular now than at any time in your life. We like how you think analytically, and we like what you have to say. Keep it up, my friend. Come with me one day to Martha's Vineyard, and you'll see whether I'm more popular now than any time in my life. The tragedy is that people judge me not by the principles that I've espoused for years, which are neutral and cut both ways, sometimes help liberals, sometimes help conservatives, sometimes help Democrats, sometimes help Republicans. No, they judge me by whether I'm on their side or not. And so I'm popular today with people in the middle and who are conservatives, and very unpopular with people on the extreme left. Okay, this is one of the nasties I get all the time. Dershowitz is secretly relieved the Epstein files aren't being released. Then why have I called for its release? Why did I devote a whole show to saying Epstein files are being suppressed? I know they are. I know the names of people who are being protected. I'm not allowed to disclose them under seal. I want everything out, including attacks and criticisms of people who claim to be victims and in fact were perpetrators. I want everything out because I have absolutely nothing to hide, as I've said from the beginning. Got a lot of letters about the Bible. King David also had Bathsheba's husband Uriah killed in a battle because David had gotten Bathsheba pregnant, which is my point. David is certainly anything but perfect. He did basically murder Uriah. And part of the reason that some of the defenders give is, well, murder is less serious than adultery. And if he had sex with the wife of a living person, he'd commit adultery, so he killed him, and now he's no longer an adulterer. What absurdity. That's obviously not in the Bible. Jesus wasn't depicted as perfect in the New Testament. Didn't Jesus lose his temper and get angry and destroy all the temples of the money changers? Yes. And that part of Jesus was very, very human. And there are many parts of Jesus that are human. But if that's the worst thing you can say about somebody, that he got angry at moneylenders, it's pretty close to perfect. So I'm happy to regard Jesus as perfect, and King David is very, very imperfect. Professor, would you please comment on Epstein's death? What does your gut tell you about his suicide? My gut tells me two things. Number one, he did not simply commit suicide. If he committed suicide, he was helped. They turned off the cameras, they got rid of his cellmate, the people who were supposed to be watching him were asleep. He paid, or somebody paid, others to turn their back. Now the question is, did he kill himself or did somebody else kill him? Hard to believe that anybody else killed him. I think he might have been motivated to kill himself because he was such a hedonist. And the idea that he would be spending the rest of his life in a rat-infested jail or even in a better prison is something that I think he couldn't abide. So I suspect, but I can't prove it, that he committed suicide. I don't think there was anybody else who had a motive to kill him because nobody, if he accused people, nobody would believe it anyway. Nobody believed the word he said, so I don't think so. This is supposed to be a joke, okay? If there is an afterlife, you can use an auto pen to communicate with us on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Okay, I promise. Okay, you're going to watch me after you read my obituary. Turn on Google or whatever you do, or Rumble, on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and see if I appear. I might appear, but it might be pre-recorded, so don't fall for that. Okay. Alan, could it be possible to make a law forbidding any demonstration with a covered face? It would be very handy to look at these individuals for identification purposes. Absolutely legal. Klan basking statutes have been upheld. You may have a right to have a mask to prevent yourself from getting sick or communicating your illness to somebody else, but if you use your mask to cover up your crime, it is perfectly permissible for the state to say, no, we will enhance the penalty if you have worn a mask. Those laws have been upheld in many different contexts. And I think, liberals love the anti-Klan masking statutes, but they don't like the anti-Hamas masking statutes. But that's typical of the double standard that we talked about. We stand on the shoulders of imperfect men and women. Having the full picture allows us to better understand our great leaders and realize one can have significant weaknesses and still do great things. I agree with you completely. That's why I'm in favor of full and complete disclosure. The Catholic Bible definitely treats the Jewish Bible and includes it. The Christian Bible includes the Old and New Testament. As a Catholic, I love the Old Testament and its imperfect heroes. And look, there's no such thing as a perfect hero. So let's be very clear. In fiction, perhaps, and in biblical accounts, perhaps, but in real life, nobody's perfect. As they say in England, no person is perfect to his butler. Regarding the Old Testament, both Joseph and Daniel are men of extremely high virtue. I agree, and that's partly because we know so little about them. If somebody were authorized to do a biography, we'd probably find things. All right, a couple more, and then we'll finish. Professor Michael Franzese, a former capo in the Columbia crime family, says unequivocally that the mafia killed JFK. He says he was told this by two different crime family bosses and by his father's Sonny Franzese, who was a Colombo family underboss. Do you think the claims are credible? I don't think they have ever been disproved, partly because they have continued to suppress the information about John F. Kennedy's horrible sex life, which included affairs with girlfriends of mafia and many other affairs, including with underage people. And if anybody ever did a full and complete study of JFK's sex life, it would be devastating, along with that of Martin Luther King and many others. Talk about imperfect. We selectively decide what part of our heroes' lives that we are prepared to disclose and not others. I'm in favor of full disclosure. Okay, final. I am not a lawyer, but a student of history. In the 1830s, the Supreme Court ordered President Jackson to stop the deportation of Cherokee tribe, and he refused into Indian territory. President refused, famously said, Chief Justice Marshall rendered the decision, they'll let him enforce it, saying he was the commander of the army and not them. It was not the finest moment in American history, and so I don't think we should use that as a precedent. I think what Jackson did was wrong, and I'm hoping that President Trump will continue to appeal and challenge all of the rulings that he disagrees with, but not defy them. That's the American way. That's our system of checks and balances, and that's constitutionalism. Finally, my newest book has just been printed. It's not yet available, but you can order it on Amazon. And it's another pamphlet like the 10 big anti-Israel lies. It's called Palestinianism, the newest attack on peace, human rights, and democracy. And I define Palestinianism. I do not mean supporting a Palestinian state or the rights and well-being of the Palestinian. These are entirely reasonable. I mean only the obsessive focus on the claims of Palestinians and their supporters to the exclusion of the claims of other more deserving groups. The singular focus on the rights of the Palestinians is coupled with an equivalent singular focus on the alleged wrongs of only one country, Israel, the nation state of the Jewish people. That's anti-Semitism. And this book explores the dangers of Palestinianism. Get it for a couple of bucks on Amazon. We're giving it out free on college campuses, along with my other book. So please send for these books and read them and learn all sides of the story. Thanks, and I hope you enjoyed the tour of my house, and I'll see you tomorrow. I forgot to mention 3 things from my back wall. This is a drawing of me defending Vice President Gore in Bush versus Gore in front of the Florida courts, in which we were challenging the election results. So here I was defending the Democratic candidate and the voters of Palm Beach County who were subjected to the butterfly ballot. You wouldn't know it's me, but it is me in that picture. This picture, you know, is me. This is me being carried out of a hotel by 2 police guards in Switzerland because Ahmadinejad, the miserable anti-American, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel then president of Iran, was coming to speak at the United Nations. He was being honored by the United Nations. And I simply challenged him to debate me on whether the Holocaust occurred. He was a Holocaust denier, and he agreed. He said, we'll debate at Harvard. And I said, no, we won't debate at Harvard. We'll debate where the evidence is, at Auschwitz. And he turned away, and I got arrested and taken out of the building. Fortunately, I had some friends, former students at the White House at the time, and on speed dial, and the White House called the Swiss people, and I got freed, but not before I was taken out. This is a nice fan letter. This is a letter from Kirk Douglas, 2007. Dear Mr. Dershowitz, I'm a fan of yours, and then talks about a book that I had written. So, these are additional parts of my wall. This is me being proclaimed an honorary whatever of Miami Beach by the mayor of Miami Beach. And I am very accepted here. I don't think I would ever get honorary citizenship in Martha's Vineyard or Boston or any other place like that. But proud of my wall, proud of my life, and so here it is, my life on a wall. One more thing. This is a picture that was given to me by the head of the Israeli Air Force of Auschwitz with Israeli planes flying over it. Imagine if Israel had an Air Force back in the 1940s, how many lives could have been saved. But the Jews had no Air Force and no way of protecting them, so Auschwitz became the cemetery for over 1 million innocent Jewish babies and women and children and males and others. And so I always have pictures there to remind me. And then finally, there's a great lithograph by a French artist, Dumier, of a criminal lawyer who has just gotten his client acquitted for pickpocketing. And of course, the client is then pickpocketing the fee he just paid the lawyer. That's the life of a criminal lawyer.